Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to InCast. Today we're back with Alex, who will be co-hosting with us. Alex, say
That's
hi.
me. Nice to see you guys again.
Wonderful. And we have our very special guest today, which is...
Nuriddin. Hi, guys.
We have Nuriddin. He will be today's special guest. And, well, gentlemen, today we'll be discussing life abroad. Right? So foreign culture, essentially, and everything that is connected with that. So first and foremost, Nuriddin, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
My name is Nuriddin, and I was born in 2005 on October and Halloween. And I've spent most of my life in the U.S., but half of it in Uzbekistan. So I have basically the best of both worlds. And I lived in New York, which is it's like an amazing city, of course. And right now, I'm what's called a sophomore in university, and I study economics.
That's wonderful. Well, first and foremost, New York. How did you like it there?
Well, it's amazing, to be honest. Like, New York is like such a different, place or an atmosphere than any other place like in the world. That if I go to New York for like 6 months, stay there, and I come back to Tashkent, I can't sleep for 2 or 3 days because of the background noises that are special and the smells that are special to New York itself. That I've been used to it so much that when I come back to Tashkent, I have to put white noise machines. I have to go on YouTube and play like New York sounds, and I just have to do like basically like the incenses.
Yeah.
There's this one type of incense which might be illegal here, but yeah, I like spread it around my room and then I go to sleep. That's how I can sleep.
All right.
That's kind of funny. I mean, it's interesting how many sentimental emotions you have connected to New York, but a lot of people see it in a very different way. And I mean, I'd personally say I'm one of those people, so I want to kind of discuss a bit. So living in New York, you were born in 2005, right?
Yeah.
Did you have to like support yourself, or were you mainly with your family?
No. Basically, my family won a green card in 2013, and we went there June 1st. And for 6 months, like it was kind of hard, for the whole family, especially me, because I didn't know English and I had to study there. Nobody knew Uzbek or Russian there, so I had to come up with a way of understanding the language, which I did not understand, and it was difficult for me. But I was not financed by myself. I was financed by my parents. Basically, they gave me everything that I needed, and they made sure I studied, and I got a good education.
Understood. That's
cool.
Wonderful, right?
Yeah.
Now we got the main gist of it, right? So New York, it's drastically different from Tashkent. Of course, both places have their ups and downs. Now let's start centering more around foreign culture. Gentlemen, so what do we know about foreign culture? I would maybe Alex, you would try to discuss a little bit.
Culture is foreign. It's not from here. I mean, I guess foreign culture is kind of an interesting concept because when you're living in one place, whether that be for your whole life or for a significant period of your life, your mind doesn't really comprehend the fact that other people live differently. And when you live in, let's say, Uzbekistan for most of your life, a lot of things which you wouldn't expect to become culture shocks become culture shocks. One of the biggest things could be like even internet speed, where it's such a rudimentary thing, but when you go abroad and you realize people always have good internet, always, regardless of where in their country they are, you think, wow, that's really interesting. What else is different?
Yeah, I mean, I can also give a great example of culture shock, right? So in places which are more traditionally centered, possibly we're going to step back from Western civilization and go back to our Eastern brethren, like somewhere in Japan or in these Asian countries. It's really, I don't know how to even explain this. It's a completely different world there because they're all so used to being so traditional, they're really black and white, right? So if you come up to somebody, right, and just say something without saying like hi, like introducing yourself and making small talk, if you just confront them, they're gonna be they're gonna be dumbfounded. They're gonna think, wow, well, what is this weird American man saying, right? What about you, Nuriddin? What are your experiences with different cultures?
Well, this is a culture that is most drastically different than any other. Have you guys been to Lebanon?
No, but my parents have worked there.
I have eaten at a restaurant called Foreign Lebanon in Tashkent. This is not an advertisement, but they make delicious food.
Oh yeah, Lebanese food is one of the best foods that have been ever invented and have ever cooked, and Syrian of course. But still, the Lebanese culture is so like drastically different from any other culture that, like, basically what they do is they have fun in any way they find, what was it called, any way possible. Like their number one rule is have fun, and they don't have any other rules. For example, like after the Beirut explosion, one day was spent in mourning, and then after that, everyone back to partying. Like I wasn't there at the time of the Beirut explosion, but I went like 2 or 3 days after that because I had to go there, an emergency type of stuff. I go there and I see like parties in the Hadash district. Hadash district is like a small district, mostly for parties, and everyone was out there partying, drinking their guts out, and it was just a fun experience for them. And I understood that even if like life brings them down to the ground, they pick themselves up by fun. So I tried to adopt that system to myself. Anything happens to me, I just think of it, hey, I can have fun with it.
Yeah, that's like
cool.
one really cool way of thinking about it. Now, yeah, culture shock. That's definitely like a very real precedent when you're traveling abroad. Now let's try to focus around Europe. Let's go by continents. All right, guys. So what do we know about Europe? Well, I can start off because I was born and raised there. Europe is it's different. I'll just say that much. It's different, right? For every single country located in Europe, they have their own different sets of values and traditions. Let's start off with Eastern Europe. That's sort of like Russian-ish side. There's the Soviet Union vibe. There's the old Russian man vibe. Strong man, masculinity, female. Femininity, they're just complete polar opposites. Now, if we shift a little more towards, southern, maybe northern, the more civilized. Okay, I can't say civilized.
You can't say that in your country.
Yeah, but like towards, the more European countries,
Yeah.
right? So Germany, Switzerland, Sweden, Netherlands, etc. Over there, I can already say this completely, but the boundaries between, masculinity, femininity, they start changing up, right? So in certain places, not necessarily does the man have to be the breadwinner, has to be the big strong man with the 70-inch biceps, right?
It's very interesting that you mentioned Sweden, and that's actually the thing that was in my mind the whole time while you were talking about like Europe, because Sweden is a Nordic country, right? It's like it's way more north than the rest of the European countries, and for me that's also Europe. I also consider Sweden to be like a European country.
Yeah,
but geographically and also in terms of culture, they're actually really different. And so for me, when I think about Europe, one of the biggest things is like diversity, but in a positive way. Like
and inclusivity.
Yes, exactly. And really reflects, I think, in the culture of each country individually that they are used to being in this kind of environment.
Yeah, that's completely correct. And now that we're still talking about Europe, right? So as I was saying, the traditional roles, the traditional social standards of the last 300-400 years, really they're polarized, right? So masculine roles can be withheld and they can be taken by the women, which is to some degree their own choice, right? So they're not necessarily against it; they're actually propagating such behavior. So it's their choice, right? And Europe, it's extremely diverse. I think you said it the best. It's extremely diverse. It's different from other places. All right. Would anybody want to add anything to this particular continent?
Well, European culture.
Yeah. Have you ever met European people?
Yeah,
What would you say?
I've been to Paris, and Paris is like a little weird. Because like you think Europe, right? Inclusivity, but you go to Paris and then you start talking in an American accent, like that all that inclusivity just flips on its side. Like they start treating you worse.
Yeah, I can understand that completely.
Yeah, they start treating you worse. And like the thing is, when you think of Europe, like you're supposed to think, oh, veganism, health, blah blah blah. When you go to France, it's completely different because the first thing they do in the morning is drink an espresso and smoke cigarettes, and then like they have to have cigarettes like every 30 minutes or something like that. I'm okay with that. That's my friend side there, but they drink a goddamn amount of wine.
Oh yeah,
Amount of wine.
Yeah, that's understood. And on that same note, right? In France, like I've been to France several times. It's like 2 hours away from the Netherlands. We used to take the car there, right, just for Saturday, Sundays to have some fun. And I remember, like, even if you, I mean, I speak French, right? I speak French well. However, if you come to like a native French speaker, right, a francophone, that's what they call themselves, whatever, and you say, hey man, can you tell me the directions to the locust coffee shop? Like with this surfer bro accent, right? They're gonna be like, mais quoi? Quoi? Like, what are you saying, bro? What? Like, they're gonna pretend like they don't know English on purpose.
Yeah,
That's
French
like,
people.
Yeah, French, bro. Who was in Paris? French people were in Paris. Exactly.
They certainly were.
Yeah. So they're like, they're very, very niche. Like, they have their keen, how should I say this? Interest in conserving their own language and their own culture. And that's why if they see some weird American boy coming to them, or like some weird Uzbek boy, they're gonna say, mais quoi, je parle pas anglais, or whatever the heck.
He's flexing his French skills.
All right, yeah. So that's Europe for you guys, yeah? Any last additions?
That's about it. Let's close the Europe chapter immediately.
All right.
We don't like
as
Europe.
quickly as possible.
Europe. No, what do you mean we don't like Europe? Europe is good. Let's move on to North America. All right, let's go to North America. So we've already discussed America a little bit. Now let's generalize it. So, Alex, start us off.
Sure. Yeah, North America. Let's talk about this. A lot of people, I think, in today's society, and if we're talking specifically about Uzbekistan, I think there's this like prevailing idea that the only kind of like discourse and conversation relating to North America is how can I get in?
Yeah.
Like, what's the best way to get into North America? And I find it very interesting because I think a lot of people in the US, a lot of people that have been to the US, nowadays they realize that it's not really all that it's like cracked up to be. There are a lot of issues and a lot of problems. And so I think it's very interesting that nowadays, like, let's say, my students, right, or people who are, living in Uzbekistan and have always lived in Uzbekistan, the thought is, how do I get in, right? While a lot of other people, most other people, in my opinion, most other people, it's how do I get out?
Yeah, I have to completely agree with that, because I was also working as a guidance counselor in Uzbekistan, like in Tashkent, for like the past year, for high schoolers who were like, their main goal was just to get into the U.S. any ways possible. And I asked them, like, what do you want to do in the U.S.? And they have this one idea that they're going to go to the U.S., they're going to study there for 4 years, and while they're studying, they're going to pay off their tuition somehow. They're going to send money back to their parents. They're going to be good for themselves, right? Like, get them anything they want. And I just think about it, like, I think about, what was it called? The life there that we had for the first 2 years. And I just think if one person working cannot even, afford tuition for themselves. That's why they have scholarships, and student debt. That's why student debt exists, because one person can't pay off their tuition and live off of that. And then another thing is the crime rate right now in the U.S. is skyrocketing. That's why we have come back. And I don't want to get too political into it, but I think it's the Democrats' fault, but still. And the U.S. is rapidly changing. Like, every single day, new stuff happens. Like, you go to any urbanized center in the United States, whether it be Los Angeles, Atlanta, New York, Philadelphia, or any other city, you'll understand what's going on with the United States. You have to go there for you to understand what's going on there. And people always make that mistake. Like, they go there thinking it's going to be amazing, but they come back after 5 years thinking, what the hell did I do all that time?
Yeah, exactly. That's 100% true. Just to add on to that, we've lately been seeing the news of what's been happening in the U.S., right? Yeah. So recently, I'm not sure if this was in New York or in Brooklyn or whatnot, but like a 15 or 17-year-old Uzbek boy was shot up.
Oh yeah. I remember that.
And that happens so frequently in the U.S., right? That boy is just gonna eventually turn into just yet another statistic, which is like so unfortunate, because that's just how common that is, getting shot up, right? And the only reason why the mayor had to go out and like probably take him by hand, I don't want to like throw shade or anything, right? But it's because they're trying to be more inclusive and uphold their diversity programs, and by diversity programs we mean the
I think this topic is
Yeah, yeah.
a little bit heavy. I want to
Yeah.
mention something when we're talking about statistics. Have you guys heard of the concept of the Florida man?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Oh, yeah.
Would you like to explain? So what is a Florida man? Tell me.
Oh, a Florida man. A Florida man is, what was it called? Every weird thing in the United States that exists, what was it called? Embodied in one theory of a man.
Yeah.
Like, if you guys are wondering what a Florida man is, I'll let you ask one thing. Like, get 5 friends and get all your birthdays and just search up Florida man.
did
and then
this
your
on that
birthday.
day. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
what goes on there? It will be crazy. On my birthday, I searched it up on October 31st. A Florida man went into a Walmart in Florida, classic, right? They brought a crocodile with them and they started stealing stuff by putting the stuff into the crocodile. And then they took the crocodile out easily. They weren't, what was it called, charged with anything because it's Florida. It's crazy.
Exactly.
I love Florida.
Yeah, on that note, on that exact same note, I did the whole search up your birthday. Like Florida man did this on the 3rd of October, right? I was born on the
Yeah.
3rd of October, and what I saw, bro, it was unprecedented. I saw Florida man, October 1st, 2021. Florida man making DIY grills. Grills out of his home. And I thought when you write out of your home, right? Like, so like inside of your house. No. This guy was taking the bark from the inner side of his house, from the shelves, making wooden grills out of his home. It was quite literally the peak of a Florida man doing blank.
That's some Abraham Lincoln technology. That's crazy. So the reason why I actually mentioned Florida man,
Yeah.
and like, as you guys can hear, there's a lot of these stories of like Florida man doing something. A lot of people like to imagine that it's the same man, not different people from Florida, but the same one Florida man who keeps doing all these things. The reason why so many stories keep coming up about Florida man and Florida woman doing these crazy things is because the laws in Florida actually allow you to find out all this information when these people get charged, whereas other states actually don't.
Yeah.
It's not possible. So it's not that all these things keep happening in Florida all the time and only in Florida. It's that only in Florida you can learn all this information and find all of it out. And that actually brings me to my next point, which I want to talk about. US, right? So when you talk to, whenever I say I'm from the US to somebody here living in Uzbekistan, they say, okay, are you from New York, Texas, or California? And these are the 3 places. There's no other place in the US at all.
Maine, Maryland, no,
There's
none of that.
47
New
more
York.
states.
Exactly. So what do you guys think about that?
That's
Genuinely, just like how Uzbeks or like the local population perceives America and Aksh, that's what they call it, Aksh, right? If you don't go to either New York, like possibly Los Angeles, they say that sometimes, California or the most popular 2 or 3 or 4 locations, they're like, bro, that's not even New York. I mean, bro,
that's not even
that's
America.
not even America. That's Turkestan. Turkey. That's something like that, right?
I went to, what was it called? Mexico City twice.
Oh,
Mexico City it's so beautiful. Like, it's an amazing place. And then there's
a
downsides
little
like
closer
that. Oh
to
yeah.
yeah.
It's an amazing city, right? But then there's also, it's in Mexico. Like, with Mexico, like, you have to have, what was it called? You have to be very cautious with Mexico, I believe. The culture there is amazing. It's like basically imagine Uzbeks, but more American.
Is everything orange?
No,
Is there an orange filter?
Yeah, I swear.
The
That's
thing
how I
is,
feel.
like every single movie you see, like they put an orange filter to it, right? But like it's somewhat close to what happens in reality because everything in Mexico is basically that orange, yellow, tintish color.
Yeah, they have that color in it in the buildings.
Yeah, in every single building you see, and that's why people believe like there's like a tint over there. Like it's an amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Now on that same note, Alex, you wanted to add anything about Mexico?
No, actually not. I have never visited Mexico. I always wanted to. I always thought it's a really cool place, but I have never been there.
Yeah. I mean, for me, generally, I've been to, Spanish places and not only like Spanish speaking places, but like, the smaller islands like Ibiza and whatnot. Those are really, really good places. I sure do love them. And just the one thing that I can state about like, Hispanic areas is that it's either like a developing place with not necessarily the best living conditions.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
or it's the most deluxe gated place that you could ever imagine.
Oh, yeah.
Like
100%.
so much money. The money is probably, you know, a little on the darker side.
Yeah. Colombian side.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, it's just so crazy. Like how, you know, we're talking about culture. I already said this. It's polarized. It's just, you know, from one extreme end to the other extreme end. That's why, you know, Hispanic places, they have, again, their ups and downs.
Yeah.
I think another interesting thing. I mean, you mentioned Ibiza, right? It's a lot of these, especially like Caribbean, not necessarily like South America, Latin, but like Caribbean, in that area. A lot of them, the rich people aren't only, you know, Colombian, you know, get lucky, sell your materials, groups of people. It's actually foreigners. Like a lot of these countries have laws, or actually they don't have laws that pertain to paying taxes. And you don't have to pay anything. And so it's like, if you're Mark Zuckerberg and you're thinking, I got like, you know, 50 million bazillion dollars. I don't want to pay any government. What am I, stupid? And they just put all this money into a country where there's no money anyway. And so they don't tax their citizens and they get off scot-free. So I think it's like, when you say dark, I think it's even darker than you think, because it's these groups of people that just don't want to contribute to society.
Yeah, exactly. I can agree with you completely, right? So like, you know, same thing about, many different countries where laundering your money through the government itself right up front, if you have those bajillions, oxillions of bintildillions of dollars.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right. So let's move on now from South Americas, from the Hispaniolos to which place should we discuss next?
We brought up the topic of Japan for a little bit. Do you have any experience with Japan and like Japanese culture? I mean, I feel like it deserves a separate podcast episode, because like Japanese culture and all that is really interesting. But do you have any experience with that?
Yeah, 100%. You need to make a podcast about Japan itself alone, because it's so, what was it called? The culture itself is rich, and like it's like Japan is also another place that's like no other place. It's hundreds of years away from us. And the thing about Japan is, like, my experiences in Japan is, I've never been to Japan, but I have a couple of Japanese friends and many viewers, and you guys have, acclimatized by the anime that you guys also watch. So from my experiences, Japan is a very, how can I say, it's a weird place. It's very weird. It's very orthodox, and then it's like a little westernized at the same time, and like, Japanese food is one of the greatest foods that exist in the world. Like almost everybody likes sushi and anything like pertaining to that side of Japan. But also Japanese culture and like the Japanese history is so rich that Japan is actually the oldest country in the world, if you think about it.
Interesting.
I'm not sure that's true, but like, no. Traditionally,
Japan,
like the culture,
Japanese Republic,
exactly.
Japanese Republic is not the oldest, but Japan is like one of the oldest.
Yeah, because it has like the culture's roots date back definitely hundreds of years, right? And you know, they had their whole dynasties, they had their whole samurais, then that they turned into ninjas, and then they turned into Naruto Shippuden. But you know, alas, Japan has its very unique culture. I can also say this firsthand, right? So I have such experience where I just understand that they are like different people. That they're a different species than us, because they're just so intrinsically inclined towards their own traditions that they couldn't even. I'm talking about like the older generation of Japanese people, not the younger ones, because we'll discuss that in a minute. So the older generation, right? So these folks, right? They're if I was given one word to describe an older generation, or if you were given one word, which word would you use, Alex? To
Me
describe,
personally?
yeah, to describe an older generation of Japan. One word.
That's very interesting. Stuck up.
Okay. All right. What about you? Honor. Okay. I would most definitely use grounded. Grounded.
Three very different opinions about the older generation. How old are we talking?
I'm talking like late 40s to early hundreds, you know, like that, you know, senior citizens, the ones walking around with strollers and diapers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
This is the best groups of people.
So yeah, explain your word.
I will. I want to ask, have you actually been to Japan?
Yes, I have. So
when?
First, that was end of 2014 slash mid 2016. That
That's
were
very interesting.
two different experiences.
Which places did you go to?
First one was just to the capital for a 2-day debate. The second one was with my father.
Tokyo.
If I'm not mistaken, we went for. Let me think.
Osaka?
No. We went to the capital twice.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to think. 10 days. If it's a little more than 10 days, basically, we spent most of our time just in the hotel that my father's work paid for, right? And we had to stay there. We couldn't necessarily leave because we were under diplomatic notice. So we had to stay in a local area. So I didn't get to explore too much. But what I can just say from experience is that you can't come up to an elderly citizen or like an older couple because it's very weird. You see so many old couples. And when I say old couples, I don't mean 30 and 40. That's what you guys all think. Yeah. Like 80, 90, 100-year-old couples. Well, they haven't been together for 100 years, but they're very old and they just stick together. What is divorce in Japan? They don't know what that is. That's death. That's death. Exactly.
Divorce is death.
Exactly. That's social death because you're going to be frowned upon. All right. So back to you, Alex.
So I don't know if it's by far, but I do know that Japan has the oldest group of people of any country. The average age of a person is much older than any other country.
Exactly.
Because people there, they live longer. And one of the things that, the reason why I mentioned, stuck up and for the audience, stuck up basically means not willing to change their opinion, stubborn. They don't listen to other people. The reason why I said this is because most older people in Japan, they support other older people.
Yeah.
When you look at, most countries nowadays, of course you would prioritize, or most people would prioritize caring for their own generation because they care for themselves. But also in a lot of those same countries, you would expect people to want the younger generations to develop, grow, and have more opportunity. In Japan, it is the other way around. The older people think, oh, you're young? You're inexperienced? Leave, idiot. Get out of here. I hate you specifically. And so these older people, they create laws that support other older people. They do things that make it much more difficult for younger people to live and for, foreigners, let's say, to come in. My best friend of a lot of years, he moved to Japan about half a year ago, and he said he has been suffering immensely because as a foreigner, and if you don't have Japanese at a professional level, these kinds of laws and the things that old people put into place, they basically destroy all of your chances and opportunities. So that's why I think
Stuck up.
Stuck up, exactly.
Nice. Now to you, Nuriddin. So
yeah, my
your
word
word.
was honor.
Yeah.
Because if you look back in the Japanese history or Japanese culture, back at 50, 60 years ago, Japanese culture was grounded upon honor, pride, and everything like that. They have this, I believe it was called the Saijo ceremony. If a military officer is defeated in battle, but he's not killed in battle, he has to commit Saijo or something.
Seppuku.
Seppuku, which they have a special sword for that. Every officer has a special sword for that. They have to commit, unaliving themselves because monetization. They have to unalive themselves because of the disrespect and the dishonor that it will bring them if they come back from the war.
Yeah.
Same thing with the kamikaze pilots that missed their targets, that could not, that ran out of fuel. They came back to their country in Japan and they were shunned. They were, outcasts of society. They were outcasted. They were, basically left alone to die because they were dishonorable to themselves, and they believed that you had to die for your country, you had to die for your emperor, and I believe that's an amazing work of the greatest propagandizers in history.
Yeah, that's really one way to say it.
Yeah.
Now, to my word, grounded. Why did I say grounded? I meant grounded in quite a literal sense. What I was able to observe, not just firsthand, but just through many documentaries, I've written several research papers as well for some other projects of mine, which we're not going to discuss, about the Japanese culture and about specifically the Japanese elderly, the senior citizens. They're quite literally grounded. What I mean by that is that they sit on special wooden floors when they eat. First of all, for instance, Uzbeks, we have tapchans, right? And that's just in small family gatherings. Sometimes when you're trying to be extra quirky, you sit on tapchan, right? But for them, it's either I sit on I'm not sure what the thing was called, but it's like a mat, like a wooden mat.
yeah.
It's a little higher elevation than the floor itself, but it's still technically on the floor. It's like 15 centimeters above. It's a small platform. They have to sit on that platform and eat. It's either I sit on this platform and eat, or I don't sit on this platform and I do not eat.
Yeah.
Right. So they're quite literally grounded using technology. Again, although the Japanese has one of the most rapidly, developing technological advancements throughout the last century. Right.
Yeah.
They're elderly. I'm talking about the traditional elderly, not like the SCP white coated gentlemen who work on their weird technological thingy majooks.
Yeah.
The traditional elderly, they do not handle technology well, and some of them straight up refute the idea of technology because it's just so alien to them. They can't imagine themselves sitting on their small wooden platforms and using one finger to scroll through a small rock that's the size of their hand, and it shines a bright light to them, and they get flashbanged, and it's crazy.
Flashbacks of World War II.
All right, exactly, right? So that's why I decided to use grounded. They're down to this earth per se.
That's pretty funny because, as you mentioned, like the lack of acceptance of technology, they don't really care for new technology. In Japan, even though there are so many things that are new for people in other countries, they actually still use cash a lot.
Yeah,
A lot more than in other countries. Like, for example, I've been living here, like 4-something years. I don't use cash anymore at all, ever. Every supermarket I go to, card, or just, pay me, click, whatever, through my phone. In Japan, they don't. And also internet speeds. So I mentioned, like, you go to another country, the internet speed is crazy. In Japan, in a lot of cases, the internet speed is actually terrible. And for example, like, let's look at, IPs, right? I got, like half a year ago, I moved into an apartment. I paid for like Uzonline, terrible company, by the way. Don't do that. And they charged me like, I don't know, what $1, $2 for setting it up. And the guy came and he was like, oh, hello, how are you doing? And he set everything up, easy peasy, perfect. In Japan, if you want to get people to set up internet for you, you pay them like $200 or like even more. It's insane, the amounts of money that you spend on internet that is subpar. So interesting that you mentioned about like the lack of technology. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Now we can't necessarily say that technology is lacking in Japan. It's just to some degree they can even consider technology to be a taboo there because, again, the elderly are the ones in power, and the elderly, to some degree, do not concur with the mainstream media and their new rapidly rising youth. Oh, I'm not even going to talk about the Japanese youth. We've discussed Japan enough. Asia as a whole, Asia is quite similar. Of course, yeah, there are going to be people who are going to be hating on me, but like you can divide Asia into two segments, right?
Yeah.
So just divide into half. We have Asian places like Japanese, Chinese, Taiwanese, Japanese, Balinese, all of these knees. All right, yeah. All right, please don't hit on. Please don't hit on me.
Canceled today.
There's South Korea, North Korea, all the Koreas, right? They're here, and then we have the home traditional Soviet Union Asia.
Yeah.
That's Central Asia, right? We have our close neighbors here. That's like a completely different world from these knees and Koreas and all of that. It's completely different. And let's talk about finally. This episode is about, of course, foreign culture, but let's wrap it up with discussing our home, Central Asia. I want Alex to start off with this one because Alex, you're not necessarily from here, so give it a go.
Central Asia. I think it's very interesting. I talked to another person recently about Central Asia and culture and all these kinds of things, and one word really stuck out, which is confused. So the reason why confused is because when you mention, like, it's been like 2 or 3 times this episode, you mentioned Soviet Union, right? Soviet Union was kind of a rejection of culture. It was a rejection of religion. It was a rejection of difference, and it's like a complete, embrace of unity. Whereas in reality, these cultures are so different. Like, as far as I remember from the history of Uzbekistan, there are a lot of conflicts nowadays because the way that the Soviet Union drew up the Uzbek, kind of map and what Uzbekistan is, it's not necessarily accurate to what Uzbek people are, right? And there's so many different like groups of people living here all together under the brand of being Uzbek. And so when you think about it, like overall, there's so many things that are strange and that have been happening in like a kind of a strange way. For example, how, you know, a lot of people don't know that the Uzbekistan is a secular country.
Yeah.
It's a secular country. It's not
100%.
like an Islamic state. It's not religious. A lot of the people are religious, which is cool, but it's not necessarily a religious country, which I think is interesting. So I think because of the influence of the Soviet Union, a lot of things are different. And that's why people don't really understand what things actually are in a lot of ways. So that's my opinion of Central Asia. Not as a whole. I think a lot of other countries have different stories, but Uzbekistan, I guess, specifically.
Go ahead, Nuriddin.
About Central Asia?
Yes, sir.
Well, first of all, it's my home. I love Central Asia, but I do have to agree with Alex here because Central Asia, I believe they're also confused about themselves. Like, it's where like, don't cancel me, anybody. I am Uzbek. I'm 100% Uzbek blooded, but I believe I compare Uzbek people, like true Uzbek people, to a herd of sheep. You show them a way, they will go that way. Like, you show them this way, they go that way. You show them this way, they go that way. In nowhere in that herd, a sheep might not be like, oh, I want to go there. I want to go there. That will never happen. They will only go straight and go where they're told, which I believe is, Again, because of the propaganda that was distributed from the 40s and up until the 90s. Like, people were brought up saying that Soviet Union is the best. Black people in America are starving. White people in America are starving. We are not starving, so that's good, right? But it was actually the opposite way around, but who cares, right?
Yeah.
And the propaganda itself is, the roots of that propaganda in our culture is so, dug deep that if you start saying something bad about Russia, people will start looking at you weird. Like, they will assume that you're a Western spy or something. Like, of course, you're from America. That's why you think Russia's bad. If you think about it, like, Uzbekistan is also, like, let's not get too political here, but Uzbekistan is very influenced by Russia, right? Like, you talk to anybody outside, they will say, oh, Russia's the best, Russia's the best, blah, 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 blah. And I believe because that's the Soviet Union, and it's really, made people not be independent by themselves. Like, they have to, it's very similar to Japan in the way that the elderly also, are the ones pushing everything by themselves. Like, they say, oh, the youth, right? But when we're kids, we are taught, elderly are always right. Elderly is not wrong. For example, I have a grandpa. He has a way of doing things, I have a way of doing things. Mine might be more efficient in some stuff, his might be more efficient in some stuff. But the thing is, for example, if we're making a box, like a square box, he tells me to use nails, I want to use screws. He's like, no, my father used screws, nails. You have to use nails. And I'm like, no, I have to use screws because I will do it with a drill. It will be much faster. It will be better of quality. He's like, no, do what my father did. You will do what I did, and then your kids will do what you did, which I believe is a mistake because, yeah, like, you have to respect your elderly. You have to respect what they did. But progression is something that everybody needs to embrace. Like, evolution is there for a reason. Like, what I mean by evolution is I don't mean like apes and like stuff like that. I mean like evolution, evolving.
Changes.
Yeah, changes.
New
Just
things.
New things. For example, if we stayed the way we were in the 1920s, we would not have cars today. We would have cars, but only the rich would have cars, and they will be just for show.
Yeah.
But, yeah, like, embrace new stuff, embrace
Change,
evolution.
evolution. Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. So now let me wrap it up with my view on Central Asia and, well, mainly, of course, Uzbekistan, right? We had some very, very interesting ideas, right? So what I would most definitely and unequivocally state about Uzbekistan is, in one word, it's blooming.
Oh,
Now,
yeah.
what I mean by blooming is it's not necessarily developing way too fast, but it's still in the process. It's in the building process of becoming like Western society. It's as if this is one of the negative sides of us developing. It's as if everybody wants to like become this American person. They want this like American McDonald's. They want these American obesity pandemics to happen. Like they want to embrace it, right? But alas, that's, maybe don't get too ahead of yourself. Okay, so let's move on to the next part of blooming. Okay, this was one of the negative sides, but the other side is that there are just so many opportunities here in Uzbekistan to develop your own business.
Oh, yeah.
Even and to start something fresh. And every single day in Uzbekistan, we see something new coming up. Like for instance, Uzu Market. We talked about this, right? It's a new thing, of course, maybe not by like a nobody, right? But still, it's just like a completely new market that came out of nowhere, that took the nation by storm. Therefore, it's blooming. And while we contrast it to the Western civilization, right? In the West, you're gonna need a permit to cut your nails. You're gonna need 375 different papers. You know, just I don't know, crack your back maybe, and it's very difficult to breathe in the West, right? You don't have as much creative freedom. Everything is legislated. Everything is like, oh, Mr. Governor, can I do this? Oh, could I please get a permit? Can I please do this and that? Well, my mother-in-law I think wants to set up like a Thanksgiving table, Mr. Governor.
Slaves of bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Okay. Let's not get too political, gentlemen. Right. Back to Uzbekistan. So as I said, we have so much wiggle room. If there's another word that I could use to further develop my argument, is the fact that we have so much wiggle room just to further develop and further ameliorate Uzbekistan as a whole. It would be the fact that we have wiggle room. It would be the fact that we're not swamped with legislative, like legal paperwork, and we're not swamped with these other things. We can breathe and strive to thrive together. And I'm starting to rhyme. All right. So yeah, that's how I would describe Central Asia.
It's like the Wild West. So many new things.
Exactly.
I mean, not necessarily new in the world term, as you mentioned. Scooters. Electric scooters.
Yeah.
They appeared like how long? Like 2 years ago?
Yeah.
I'm not sure though.
2 years ago, yeah, exactly.
Like 2 years ago, they were never here, and now they're here, and it's a new business. And I totally agree with you 100%.
Yeah,
Exactly.
thanks to our president, a little bit of pakta over there, but yeah, thanks to our president, everything is now
canceled.
open. Yes.
right.
Please give me the permit to open my restaurant. I'm still applying for it. You're still canceling me, so please.
All right, so wonderful, gentlemen. It was great having you guys here today, right? We talked about some very controversial topics, but I think that's what the viewers want. They don't want us to be here locked up for my creative freedom. They want us to really discuss what's going on, really, get down to the brass tacks of things. All right, so any last things that we would like to cover?
Not really.
Freedom. I love freedom.
Oh yeah,
We love
USA,
freedom.
USA.
White, red, blue. Beautiful colors.
Yes.
All right, gentlemen, that's wonderful. Okay, well, that's wrapping up InCast episode 8. Thank you very much for viewing in. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment what you would like to see in next videos. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye bye.